quiz corrections. Number one is 210 divided by 8. So the first thing I did, just to make it a little bit easier, is I said 210 divided by 8. If I divide by 2 here is the same as 105 divided by 4, which then makes my long division a little quicker. Okay? So I'm going to say that 4 goes into 10 how many times? 2, right? So 2 times 4 is 8. And then you subtract. Whoa, it's that left-hand writing is hard for me. 10 take away 2. 8 is 2. Then you bring down to 5. Does that make sense? Sure? Okay. So, then, I was trying to make more room. That didn't work. So let me straighten this up a little bit. Sorry about that. There we go. So then, after that, I'm going to say 4 goes into 25 how many times? 6. Right. 4 times 6 is 24, right? So when I subtract, I get a 1. So remember, that's the same as 26 and a fourth. And 1/4 is a benchmark fraction. So one way to do that is just write it as 26.25. So, or you could put a decimal in and bring down to 0, which I think in this case is more work, and then keep doing the subtraction. I guess what I'll do is go through that first. But do you see when you had the 26 and 1/4, because your remainder was 1, you could just recognize that as 26.25? There? Does that make sense? Yeah. But if you forgot about that, then you could you bring that decimal up, and now you say 4 goes into 10, 2, and then you get an 8, right? So I'm going to have to subtract. So again, I'm sort of out of room there. But when I subtract, what would I get? 2, right? So I bring down another 0, and 4 goes into 25 times, and I get 20 take away 20, so I'm done. But if you recognize the benchmark fraction, you finish 2 steps earlier. So much nicer. You know, that's the thing about knowing your benchmarks. Your choice, but might be easier. Kelsey, did you find your quiz so you could correct it? Does that help? Yeah. What else, guys? Next one. Let's just go through them if you're stuck. Allie, you got one, Fatima? Number 2. So I would start in that ratio table on number 2 to move the decimal. So you really are doing 19 divided by 4/10, right? And so that would be the same as if you multiply by 10 here, and 10 in the numerator, same thing. You have 190 divided by 4. So you could do long division there, or you could reduce first. Cutting in half, cutting in 2 parts, divide by 2. Reducing's pretty easy. So what's half of 100? 50. And what's half of 90? 140. Right, so 50 plus 45 makes 95. So that's a little bit easier division problem, isn't it? 95 divided by 2.
You said 50 plus 45.
Because half of 100, when I divide this by 2,
What? I thought.
half of 100 is 50,
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
and half of 90 is 45. And then if you add those, you get half of 190, which is 95.
Yeah, I get it.
So you can either divide 95 by 2 in your head, or you could do long division. I'm going to do that over here. 2 divided by 95. 2 goes into 9 how many times?
4.
4. You see what I'm doing, Fatima?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to subtract 1.
Yeah,
And
I was
so-
thinking too.
But now I've got a benchmark fraction, right? So it's 4 1/2, right? Whoops. Made a mistake. I lost my focus. Forgot to bring the next number down. Don't have a benchmark yet. Bring the 5 down. I'm going to, though. Sorry about that. How many times does 2 go to 15?
Oh, 7.5.
So 7 times, that's 14. You guys with me?
Yeah.
Now I have a benchmark fraction because I have a 1 left over, no other numbers to bring down, so 47.5. So the answer to this one is 47.5.
45.
Does that make sense? Claire?
Can we do 6?
Yes, we can do 6. Let's just shrink this up here. So if somebody needs it, we can bring it back. But for right now, we'll just put it in mini form over there. Okay, 6? Jack?
Would you write 1/2?
You could. You could just write 1/2. I was trying to get you guys to,
But if it like said right in decimals.
usually if you start in decimals, you end in decimals.
Okay.
So 6 is 13 divided by 1.5, that one, Claire?
Yeah.
So I would again start in a ratio table, just to get the decimal gone. So 13 divided by 1.5 is the same as multiplying by 10 and getting 130 divided by 15. You guys agree with that? So you could divide by 5 there first if you want to make it easier. How many times does 5 go into 100? Is that right? How many times does 5 go to 30? 5 times what is 30? 6. So can you see if I divide by 5? We know that 5 goes into 100 20 times, and it goes into 30 6 times, so it goes into 130 26 times. You see that? And it goes into 15 3 times. So on a problem like this, I would never go to long division. I think it's more work because I know I'm going to have a benchmark fraction because of that 3 thirds are benchmarks, right? So how many times does 3 go into 26? 8, right? And what's the remainder?
2.
So it's 8 2/3 when you divide by 3. If I divide by 3 here, I get 1. So whenever I have a 1, I know that this is my answer. Right? You guys remember that? So down here, I could just say my answer in decimal form is 8 point what? That's a benchmark fraction, 2/3. That's 1/3.
Oh,
0.6. Repeating. Or, Claire, if it's hard for you to recognize that benchmark fraction, you could do the long division, starting anywhere, It's nice if you could reduce down so you only have to long divide with 3. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then you would put your 8 up here, right? And you would get your 24. And when you subtract, instead of doing the 2/3, you could put a decimal and then bring that 0 down. 3 goes into 26 times, right? 6 times 3 is 18. And then you would subtract and you would get a 2 again, wouldn't you? And so you bring another 0 down. And you'd say 3 goes into 26 times. And that's going to keep happening because it's the repeating pattern. So you could pick, right? You don't have to do one method. There's lots of methods that work. Does one of those work for you?
Yes.
Okay. Next question. I'm going to shrink that up and move it over here. Anyone? Kelsey?
Number 4.
Okay, so again, starting that ratio table, 5.24 divided by 0.4. So you're going to multiply by 10 to get rid of the 4/10 in the denominator, so you're dividing by a whole number. You get that? So what am I going to have in the numerator then?
That means 6.
Yes, that means on top. That's right. What happens when you multiply by 10? So instead of 50, what do you think it's going to be? Because it has to have these same digits, but it's got to be close to 50. So with those 3 digits, where's the new? When you multiply by 10, where's that decimal going to be? Yeah, close to 50, right? So it's going to be 52.4, right? When you multiply by 10, the number gets larger by 1 power 10, which means the decimal shows up over 1. You can use 1 digit. So now you do long division with that, or you could divide in half. So what do you want to do? So if I divide in half by 2, I get 2, right? So if I divide 52 by 2, first divide 50 by 2. What do you get? 25. Now divide 2.4 by 2. What's half of 24? So what's half of 2.4? 1.2, like 12, right? So half of 50, when I divided this in half, half of 50 was 25, right? And half of 2.4 was 1, what? Right. So half of 52.4 is 26.2, because I add those two together. Do you see that? Let's try that again. I'm going to divide by 2 again. So take half of 26 for me. $13, right? And half of 2/10 is just 1/10. So I'm going to get 13 and 1/10. And this is a 1, so every time I have a 1 in the denominator, I know that's my answer. So I didn't need long division there. I could just use my mental math skills. Okay, Allie.
I did the same thing, but I didn't have a decimal. I just did 524 divided by 40, and I got 131 without a decimal. Is that
524 divided by,
40.
yeah, so you made a mistake there. Let's try it. So 524, let's find your mistake. Divided by 40 is not incorrect. But somewhere you lost your decimal. So you have a 1 here, right? And then this is 40. So Kelsey, you might like this way better. She moved the decimal twice. Then you get a 12, right, Allie? And you brought the 4 down? So 40 goes into there how many times? Forty into 124.
30 or 40?
Well, count by 40. 40 plus 40 is,
I want 4.
pardon me?
4 times?
What's 40 plus 40?
80,
Add another 40.
120.
So how many 40s is that? 40 plus 40 plus another 40. 3, right? Does that make sense?
Oh, that's 30.
Is that your mistake? So let's finish it correctly then, right? So this is a 120. Do you see that? So when I subtract, I just get 4, right?
Yeah.
And so 40 doesn't go into 4, so I'm going to put a decimal and bring the 0 down. So I have to put a decimal here. And now 40 goes into 41 time. Or you guys, some of you might have noticed there was a benchmark fraction there. It would have been 13 with the remainder of 4 out of 40. And 4 out of 40 is 1/10 because you could divide the fraction part by 4. That's right, Jack. So for some people, it'd be quicker to just go to the benchmark fraction because 13 and 1/10 is just 0.1. Okay. Jamal. I must have made a mistake. I can fix that. Okay. Anything else? Jack? Okay, on the quiz corrections, are we set? Is everybody? One more on the quiz correction. Fatima? Number, oh, I guess I didn't change these yet. This equals 7, right? This is my old version. I think I have some typos on this version. Yesterday Ryan ran 4 miles in 34 minutes. What was his average speed? Oh, per mile. So I just didn't have number 7 there, but it's the same problem, right? So that you want to figure out how many minutes it takes him to run 1 mile. So we could do that ratio table where you have minutes in the top and miles in the bottom. You know, how we did that with ratios a lot. So to start with, what do we start with? That's a minute. And that would be in the denominator or the numerator? The bottom or the top? So the denominator. So 4 miles and 34 minutes, right? So that's the same as 2 miles in how many minutes? What's half of 30? What's half of 2? Oh, half of 4, I mean. Yeah. So 15 plus 2 is 17. So 2 miles in 17 minutes. How many times does 2 go into 17? And what's the remainder? 1, right? Out of what? Right, so 8.5 minutes per 1 mile. So the benchmark fraction is 8.5. This could just be 8.5 minutes per mile. And it already says minutes per mile, but you could write it out too. In per mile. Lucas?
Number 8.
Yeah, the package of M&Ms. So it contains 5 colors. Oh, that on yours it says 6, huh? Doesn't really affect the problem though. That was the typo. And weighs 1.68 ounces. Is that what yours says? Yeah, because I had a corrected version. If each M&M weighs 3/100ths of an ounce, how many M&Ms are in the package? So what you need to do, what did you do first?
Well, I did 3/100ths divided by 1/6800.
So I think you mean you did 1.68 divided by 300ths.
Yeah.
And that's correct. So then you could move your decimal by multiplying by 100, right? And when you do that, you get 168 divided by 3, right? So then I bet you did long division from there. So that's a good idea. So 3 goes into 168. So 3 goes into 16 how many times?
In 6. No, 8.
Five. 3 times 5.
Oh, 5. Yeah.
15, right?
Yes.
And then when you subtract, you get
1.
and bring down the 8. 3 goes into 18.
5. No. 6.
6 times, right?
Yeah.
And 18 take away 18.
0.
0. So that tells you there's 56 M&Ms in the package. Does it matter how many colors there were?
No.
So just leave it as 56. You guys have a big test coming up on this. I'm going to post this. You should really watch it, right, if you're having trouble with, because it did multiplies and divides, or it mostly did divides, but you have the old quiz that did all the adds and subtracts.